Hello everyone. Now we begin our practice questions. In our question 1, we are given that 1 AMU is equal to what? AMU is known as atomic mass unit. Its value is derived from its definition as 1/12 of the mass of carbon 12 atom. That is, from the isotopes of carbon, we choose carbon 12. And its value is equal to 1.661 into 10 raised to power minus 24 kg. Hence, option C is our correct answer. In our next question, we are given that the mass of 1 mole of electrons is equal to what? The mass of 1 mole of electrons can be calculated using Avogadro's number, which is equal to 6.022 into 10 raised to power 23. And we also use the mass of electron, which is 9 into 10 raised to power minus 31 kg. And we use other conversion factors as well. Our final calculation gives the value of 1 mole of electron equal to 0.55 mg. In our next question, we are given that the volume occupied by 1.4 gram carbon monoxide at standard temperature and pressure is what? In this case, the answer is option C, that is 1.12 decimeter cube. This can be calculated by first which gives us 0.05 mole. Now we multiply it by the molar volume at STP, which is 22.4. So we will get 0.05 into 22.4 is equal to 1.12 decimeter cube. Hence, option C is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given the number of atoms in a molecule determines what? It determines its atomicity, that is simply the number of atoms. For example, diatomic molecule has 2 atoms and triatomic molecule has 3 atoms. So option D is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given that which of the following set has all species isoelectronic? Isoelectronic means same number of electrons. And out of all these options, option C is the correct answer, that F negative, neon, and sodium positive are isoelectronic. In our next question, we are given that which element has the same isotopes like palladium? This property is held by calcium. Both palladium and calcium have 4 isotopes, which are stable in nature. In our next question, we are given that water absorber used in combustion analysis is what? Water absorber, as simply understandable by its name, is that it absorbs water. And in combustion analysis, you need a strong substance. And this property is held by MgClO4 too, that is magnesium perchlorate. It is a strong desiccant and absorbs water easily. In our next question, we are given that a limiting reactant is the one which is what out of all these options? And it is the product that gives the minimum amount of product under consideration. Limiting reactant is consumed first in a reaction, hence It deters the amount of product. In our next question, we are given that the type of filtering media used for filtration depends upon what? It depends upon the nature of precipitate. For example, a fine precipitate may require a filtering media with small pore size. In our next question, we are given that a safe and more reliable method for drying the crystal is through what? This can be done using a vacuum desiccator, which provides a safe environment for the reaction. And also removes the moisture. In our next question, we are given that a method of separation of components from its solution using distribution law is what? It is known as solvent extraction, which separates materials depending upon their composition. In our next question, we are given that a real gas obeying van der Waals equations will resemble the ideal gas if one of these conditions is satisfied. For resemblance of ideal gas, we have to assume that A and B are sufficient. Van der Waals equations considers the non-ideal cases. Hence, when both A and B are small, they do not satisfy van der Waals, and hence we have an ideal gas. In our next question, we are given that equal masses of methane and oxygen are mixed in an empty container at 150 degrees centigrade. The fraction of total pressure exerted by oxygen is what? In this case, the moles of O2 are and moles of CH4 are. So to calculate mole fraction of O2, we use so option C is the correct answer in this case. In our next question, we are given that polarizability is responsible for intermolecular forces and it experiences what? Due to increasing nuclear charge and decreasing atomic size, the electrons are more tightly held and hence polarizability increases along a period. In our next question, we are given that the molecules of CO2 in dry ice form what? Dry ice is solid CO2, which is molecular in nature. Hence, option C is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given that which of the following is a pseudosalt? By pseudosalt, we mean a amorphous solid. That is, it lacks a regular structure. And this property is held by C, that is glass. In our next question, we are given that only London dispersion forces are present among what? Solid iodine is nonpolar in nature. And it's weak. Hence, London dispersion forces are present in it. In our next question, we are given that krypton, having atomic number Z is equal to 39, has electronic configuration 4s2, 3d10, 4p6. The 37th electron will go into which of the following subshells? First, the 4s and 4p are filled. Then after that, before filling 4d, it will fill 3p. Hence, option C is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given that quantum number values for 3p orbitals are what? They are option C, n is equal to 3 and L is equal to 1. In our next question, we are given that when fast neutrons strike the nucleus of nitrogen, the particles ejected are what in nature? In this case, we obtain a proton alpha particles and this is most commonly known as alpha decay. So we obtain alpha particles. In our next question, we are given that which species has unpaired electrons in anti-bonding molecular orbits? Nitrogen, having -2 charge, has unpaired electrons in anti-bonding molecular orbits, making it paramagnetic. In our next question, we are given that CO2 and CH4 have mu naught values equal to what? CO2 is a linear molecule having symmetric structure. Which makes it non-polar. Hence, its mu naught value is equal to 0. And on the other hand, CH4 is a tetrahedral in nature and has a slight polar CH bond. Hence, in this case, its value is 1.85D. Hence, option A is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given that CO2 and SO2 are both triatomic molecules, but the heat of vaporization of SO2 is greater than that of CO2. This is due to what? SO2 is a bent molecule having irregular structure. Or we can say, in this case, particularly a strong structure, making it polar. Whereas CO2 is weak and non-polar in nature. So a lot of force is required to break SO2. Hence, the correct answer is option C, That is, SO2 is polar in nature and CO2 is non-polar. In our next question, we are given that if the volumes of reactants and products are the same in a gaseous phase reaction, then the equilibrium states is not affected by one of these. If the total volume remains constant, hence the change of concentration cannot affect the system. However, change of temperature or pressure or by introducing a catalyst, the system gets disturbed. Hence, option C is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given that solubility product of AgCl is 2 into 10 raised to the power minus 10 mole square decimeter minus 6. Maximum concentration of Ag plus 1 ions in the solution is what? In this case, the formula is Dn minus 3. Hence, option B is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given that 18 grams of glucose is dissolved in 90 grams of water. The relative lowering in vapor pressure is equal to what? The mole fraction of glucose is 1 by 51. Hence, it is also equal to relative lowering. In our next question, we are given that which of the following solutions has the highest boiling point? Boiling point is directly proportional to the molarity of the solution. Since NaCl has greater than glucose and urea, hence a 5.85% NaCl, although it has a less value, it will have the highest boiling point. In our next question, we are given that stronger is the oxidizing agent, greater is the what? The strength of oxidizing agent is directly proportional to the reduction potential. Strong oxidizing agent means more electrons are gained and better reduction. Hence, option B is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given that which of the following can be used in laptops? Due to their high energy density, nickel cadmium cells can be used for this purpose. In our next question, we are given that which is true about zinc copper galvanic cell? That anode is negatively charged on which oxidation occurs, and electrons flow from anode to cathode. In our next question, we are given that which is the unit of K rate constant for a zero order reaction? It would be a standard value, which is mole per decimeter cube per second. In our next question, we are given that nitrates of which pair give different products on thermal decomposition. This phenomena is observed by lithium and sodium. Lithium nitrate decomposes to form lithium oxide, nitrogen oxide, and oxygen. And sodium nitrate decomposes to form sodium nitrate and oxygen. Hence, we obtain different products, although oxygen is same. Hence, option C is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given that which of the following shows phosphorescence? By phosphorescence, we mean a strong exhibit of phosphorus nature. Which is observed by white phosphorus. In the next question, we are given that keeping in view the size of atom, which is the incorrect order. The correct answer is that barium greater than Mg, it is incorrect. In our next question, we are given that which one does not give a borax bread test? Borax bread test is used to identify metal-based ions on color of bread form. If we observe these substances, barium sulfate, it is insoluble in both acid and alkali. Hence, it does not perform borax bread test. Hence, correct option is option B, barium sulfate. In the next question, we are given that which one is not the use of silicones? Due to their biocompatibility, they cannot be used in medicines. In our next question, we are given that the most reactive allotropic form of phosphorus is what? It would be white phosphorus because of tetrahedral structure. And unshared electrons which can react. This phenomena is not observed by the others. In our next question, we are given that chemical composition of cinnabar is what? Cinnabar is mineral form of mercury and sulfide. Hence, option B is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given that which molecule has the highest bond energy among the halogens? Chlorine has the highest bond energy. In our next question, we are given when chlorine is passed through a hot solution of caustic soda, the reaction is said to be what? This is known as a disproportionation reaction because the same element is both oxidized and reduced. Hence, we obtain different composition of substances. In our next question, we are given the most paramagnetic element is what out of all these? For an element to be paramagnetic, it needs a high number of unpaired electrons. And this phenomena is observed by chromium. In the next question, we are given that in the complex CrOH3 H2O3, the coordination number is what? By coordination number, we mean that total number of ligands bonded to central metal atom. In this case, we have 3 OH and 3 water ligands, hence we have total number 6. In our next question, we are given that which one of the following looks odd? H2SO4, KMNO4, and K2CrO4, they are all strong oxidizing agents. Whereas H2S, it is a reducing agent. In our next, hence option C is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given a great variety of organic compounds is due to the property of carbon to do what? It is due to the property to show catenation, that is, it forms long chain of carbon atoms. In our next question, we are given in 1pentene 4-ine, the carbon numbers 1, 2, and 3 exhibit hybridization respectively in what order? The hybridization is expressed in the order sp2 carbon double bond, sp3 carbon triple bond, and sp, that is carbon single bond. In our next question, we are given vinyl acetylene combines with hydrochloric acid to produce what? In this reaction, we obtain chloroprene, which is used as a monomer. In our next question, we are given when benzene is heated in air with V2O5 at 450 degrees centigrade, it yields what? In this process, we obtain a dicarboxylic acid anhydride, which is known as malic anhydride. In our next question, we are given what is the end product of dehydration of ethanol at 140 degrees centigrade in the presence of concentrated H2SO4. In this process, in the dehydration of alcohols, we obtain ethers. Since ethanol is being dehydrated in this process, hence we will obtain diethyl ether. In the next question, we are given which of the following will be sulfonated readily? That would be observed by toluene because as compared to others, it has an electron donating effect. Which is present due to the methyl group. This makes toluene highly reactive. In our next question, we are given which one of the following is not a good leaving group? Hydroxide ion is a weak leaving group because it is a strong base. And is not easily displayed. Hence option C is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given when CO2 is made to react with ethyl magnesium iodide in dry ether, followed by hydrolysis, it yields us what? In this process, when ethyl magnesium reacts with CO2 first, it gives us a salt, which is CH3, CH2, COO, MgI, that is its chemical representation is this. It passes through hydrolysis to give us propanoic acid. Hence, option C is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given the process of fermentation involves all the enzymes except what? It does not involve sucrase because it breaks down to give glucose and fructose, which are not involved, not concerned with, we can say, fermentation. Hence, option D is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given that which is or are not a source of energy for the human body. If we discuss nucleic acids, they are DNA and RNA. They are involved in genetics and hence are not a source of energy. Hence, option C is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given which one does not exhibit aldol condensation. For aldol condensation, an alpha hydrogen is required. Since benzaldehyde does not contain it, hence it cannot exhibit aldol condensation, and it is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given for industrial preparation of CH3CHO, the catalytic promoter is what? In this process, copper chloride is used as a catalytic promoter. In the next question, we are given the common name of propane 1,3-dioic acid is what? This is also known as malonic acid. In the next question, we are given which of the following is not a fatty acid. If we discuss phtalic acid, it is considered an aromatic dicarboxylic acid and not a fatty acid. Because it does not have a long chain carboxylic acid. So option C is the correct answer. In our next question, we are given industrial materials, thermal power stations are coated with what? For this purpose, we use epoxy paints because they provide resistance to corrosion, chemicals, and high temperature. In our next question, we are given which one of the following fertilizer provides nitrogen and phosphorus to the plant. This can be done by using diammonium phosphate, that is NH4 to HPO4. In our next question, we are given ECAT contains which of the following? ECAT contains fatty acids which are obtained from food waste. Hence option A is the correct answer.